God Ascending. Book 1. Ghosts. Written by Savage Tempest. Narrated by Henry Jones. Chapter 1. Godhood is overrated. Sure, you're impervious to bad weather and taxes, and it's not like anyone can kick your ass. But evolving past human definitely has its limits, especially when you're not the top god, or good with directions. I called up a micro diagram of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service's new building to orient myself as I passed a fellow lab coat down a hallway that's way too white and sterile. You know the kind. White halls that belong in one of those medical thriller movies where you just know someone's going to lose a body part or two. God, sure. I'm no more a god than Los Angeles is Mount Olympus. I'm a shadow, the ghost of Alan Preston. A Web 3.0 kind of ghost, which is both sad and cliché. Turn left at the end of the hall. I'm also a ghost who has to follow directions from shitheads like Mother. I turned left at the end of the hall. The hallway stopped at a single red door. No other doors or exits. I looked behind me and the other end was exactly the same, except the door was green. Wasn't sure that Canadians had a sense of irony. Hell, I didn't even know that they dabbled in espionage until a few hours ago. Speed it up, Preston. Don't want to get caught with your pants down, do you? Shouldn't you be posting pictures of your ass crack on social media or something? Not smart making fun of the Lazarus Project's director, but Mother is a bully, and I have a big mouth. But I increased my speed anyway as I deleted the building's floor plans from my vision. The red door didn't look like much, but according to Doc Stevens, it was lined with reinforced steel, which is great protection, except against someone like me. I knew that the camera on the other side of the hallway was watching me, and there was one above me, but it was too close to see my hand phase through the door keypad. Doc Stevens said I only have to hold my hand there a couple of seconds, and the lock clicked. I opened the door as if I owned the damn place. Don't want the cameras getting suspicious. Thankfully, no one was inside. My eyes scanned the room faster than they should be able to. Windowless and lit by neon blue lighting, 336.2 square feet. Kind of small for an off-limits laboratory, but what do I know about labs or calculating the square feet of anything? Being plugged into the superhighway is nice, but it would have helped me a lot more when I was taking my college entrance exams. Stop taking in the scenery and get busy. Stop being a nag, I said as I strode over to the room's sole computer. Incredible. This thing actually had a tower hard drive. Wonder if there are any dot matrix printers around. I helped myself to a seat and clicked the mouse. Place PET onto the hard drive. I held my breath as I opened the leather pouch attached to my belt, which is kind of crazy since I have no real nerve cells when I'm in hollow form. But touching PET always makes my skin crawl. I snatched it out of the pouch and plopped it on top of the hard drive. The wolf spider lifted its hairy, spidery legs at me in protest. Disgusting. Even more disgusting is that it's a part of me, or I'm a part of it, since I suspect it would do fine without me, and not the other way around. Why couldn't Project Lazarus have made PET less lifelike? The computer monitor, surprisingly a flat screen, suddenly started flashing red. Hell, I fucked up. The flashing abruptly stopped, and the words "Access Granted" in a bold red font momentarily took over the screen. How a mechanical spider can upload information from a security-locked computer is beyond me, but since PET is what also gives my hologram mass, I suppose it makes sense that it can do just about anything. A host of numbers and characters streamed up and down the screen. I was impressed with myself because I could keep up. Top secret, blah blah blah, God ascending, blah blah blah, angels invaders. The lights stopped blinking. Do something. Improvise. The computer is frozen. Alan, this is Dr. Stevens. You have 2 hostiles approaching. How the hell do you know that? When you plugged PET into the target's computer system, it gave us access to their entire security grid, including security cameras. PET, Projection Evolved Technology, Cute acronym, but calling a disgusting spider pet still strikes me about as clever as opening a bookstore.
Better hurry, Alan dearie.
You told me I'd have 5 minutes. Fuck! My first mission. I don't have a clue what I'm doing, and Mother is going to give me hell or worse if I screw this up. Focus. I accessed the internet and called up the manual for this computer series. In vision overlay mode, it was easy to flip through the pages like a slideshow, which was still pretty useless. Even with my brain hardwired into the Lazarus Project's supercomputer, I still can't make sense of fucking manuals. Alan, hostiles will be on you in less than 2 minutes. I swatted the hard drive tower. Naturally, it doesn't hurt me since I'm a hologram, but amazingly, the numbers and characters started flying around on the monitor once again. I held my breath for the second time today. As if holograms can hold their breath, but it's hard breaking human habits. And I'm not exactly sure I want to. I think it's done. Good job, Alan. Grab Pet and get out of there fast. Thank God, or gods, that Doc Stevens was following this mission. Mother doesn't appear to do much of anything but criticize and make lame-ass jokes. I snatched Pet from the computer tower and stuffed the hairy thing back into my pouch and exited the laboratory in record time.
Run, Forrest, run!
Not appreciating your choice of movie characters, director. But I did run. I was down the hall in seconds. I made a quick right without even thinking. The hall was empty. A good time to start sprinting. Then 2 blue-suited men appeared at the end of the hallway with black weapons aimed right at me.
Erase both hostiles and return to rendezvous point.
Do I look like I have a fucking eraser? I knew what Mother meant, but I had no intention of killing these guys. I turned invisible instead. Well, almost invisible. As a hologram, I can reject visible wavelengths, mostly green and blue, to form a sort of camouflage with the environment around me, which in this case was a sterile white hallway. It's not 100% invisibility, but if I stand absolutely still. The blue suits streaked past me and into the dead-end hallway that I just left, giving me time to walk quickly in the opposite direction. I wanted to run, but who knows how long this camouflage technology will hold up.
There he is!
Crap! 2 more blue suits, one a tough-looking female, were right in front of me and starting to take aim. I was visible again. I didn't even have to look behind me to know that my 2 blue buddies were back and probably pointing their nasty-looking pistols at me too. Can't phase through one of these walls to escape, since Pet and my pouch are the only true solid things about me, and it's not like I can go anywhere without Pet.
Erase them!
No! I screamed, which is probably the last thing I should have done. Hot lead sizzled through my chest and back. I didn't exactly feel the bullets, but my brain reacted like I did. I instinctively threw my hands up in a pathetic attempt to shield myself from killer bullets, leaving 4 hostiles dead. No, 4 people dead, shot by friendly fire.
Rendezvous point, Preston. Or do you feel like killing more people?
Fucking a-hole. A part of me wanted to check on the agents. Maybe 1 or 2 survived. But every moment that I stayed here meant that I could inadvertently kill someone else. So I ran. Chapter 2. I could say that materializing inside the lab is like waking from a dream, except that when you wake up, you realize that your life is the hazy nightmare. I was no longer dressed like a lab technician. My reflection against the life support window showed me back in my default black jumpsuit. It's 49.3 hours since my first mission, and I'm wondering if I'll lose my personality to the government-funded Lazarus Project along with my morals. On the other side of the window lay some poor sucker with entrails of tubes and cables webbed around his dead white, pale body. His head was shaved, and a beehive of wires streamed out of it, hooking straight into the Lazarus Project's supercomputer. Well, one of the computer's satellites. And the oh-so-evil director should be coming to debrief me in about 3 seconds. The door slid open. Mother stepped through with Dr. Jason Stevens in tow. Doc Stevens looked cheerful, and Mother looked, well, tall and evil. "Great job! Doc Stevens said as he walked up to me on the examination bench.
Yeah,
Mother smiled.
tons of intel from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and 4 people erased. Great job.
I was tempted to backhand Mother. Your holoform is holding up just perfect, Doc Stevens said, putting his scanner away. His dark eyes seemed sincere and hopeful. I bet we could be friends if it weren't for my condition. I jumped off of the examination bench and confronted Mother. 4 people dead is not a great job, I said.
Okay. How many more people do you need to erase to consider something a great job?
That was an accident. I already told you. Hell, I've told everyone here. Stealing's bad enough, but there's no way I can kill someone. The director's bright blue eyes took on a calculating, predatory luster.
Are you sure, Preston?
I looked him straight in the eye. Yes, I'm sure. He slid a white hand into a blue, overly expensive wool blazer. Both Doc Stevens and I stared at Mother's compact Glock 23. It looked like a cheap black plastic toy gun. Corrosion-resistant, FBI standard issue, 15-round magazine. He pointed it at me, making me almost want to laugh. You're threatening me with bullets? Mother rotated his wrist and held the gun out for me. I snatched it away from him before he did something crazy.
You said that you can't kill.
Mother readjusted his blazer, then smiled.
I'm betting that anyone can, if the stakes are high enough.
Which didn't sound good, but I kept my face neutral as I looked to Doc Stevens, whose face had gone pale. Mother pulled out his cell phone and checked the time before showing it to me.
Your counterpart over there,
he said, nodding at the life support window,
has been removed from electronic life support. You're dying, Preston.
I accessed my life support systems. He's right. Life support had been remotely terminated, and the system was on tight shutdown, so I couldn't get in and turn my life support back on. I was dying. Without even thinking, I realized that I was pointing the Glock at the director's chest. You want me to kill you? My voice didn't sound quite human, even to me.
No, Preston.
Mother smiled.
I want you to erase your buddy, Dr. Stevens.
You fucking bastard, Doc Stevens managed, but he didn't move.
Yes?
Mother turned to Jason.
And you're expendable.
The evil blue eyes were now back on me.
And you're running out of time. In less than 40 seconds, the computer won't be able to reboot your diseased body.
How about I just kill you? I lifted the gun toward the director's fat head.
You could.
Mother's smile grew even wider.
But only my voice and a certain word can reboot your systems.
I tightened my grip on Mother's Glock. My hand was shaking, actually shaking. I was still pointing the Glock at the director.
How long do you think you can live as a hologram without a real body to go home to? 20 seconds left, Preston.
Doc Stevens ran for the door. I fired 3 times in his back.
Ronin.
Mother's predatory blue eyes never left me, but I couldn't look him in the eyes. I felt the computer rebooting my life support systems. Maybe they'll find a cure. Maybe they'll just erase me. Regardless, I'm already less than human now. Doc Stevens clawed at the red stains on his back that should have 3 holes. Paint. Red fucking paint. Doc Stevens turned around and lunged at Mother, who easily sidestepped him and used the doctor's own momentum against him. Doc Stevens crashed hard into the pet computer console. He stayed down. Mother winked at me.
Welcome to the team, Preston. Now make certain that you 2 Ronin gods clean this mess up.
The door slid shut behind the director. I didn't want to look at Doc Stevens, Jason, but I had to own this. I offered him my hand. He ignored it and forced himself off of the floor. I'm sorry. Gee, Alan, afraid that sorry's not going to be enough to change either of our fates. I wanted to tell him that I was wrong and scared. But Doc Stevens was already pressing the hologram deactivation key, and I felt myself falling back into my dreamless oblivion once again. This has been God Ascending, Book 1, Ghosts. Written by Savage Tempest. Narrated by Henry Jones. God Ascending, Book 2, Service. Written by Savage Tempest. Narrated by Henry Jones. Chapter 1. It sucks being a god, especially when you're in a skirt, a goddamn maid's skirt. "What's taking you so long, Preston?" Mother's grainy voice coming straight from Pet. I'm not quite sure whom I hate more, Mother or the goddamn spider. "Stop dawdling and get on with it." "What makes you think I'm not?" "Mother always knows, and Pet confirms." There's just no winning with the Lazarus Project's director. I pressed my palm against the hotel door key latch. Green light, and I was in. I tried not to think about my 2 small hands or the fact that I was presently incarnated as a Mexican girl. Woman, I mentally corrected myself, knowing that a number of women whom I dated would probably love to see me like this. But I didn't. So I ignored the big old guest vanity mirror and headed straight for Tepper's laptop. "What's the password?" "Don't get cute, Preston. Just slip in that flash drive and let Pet do all of the hard work." The wolf spider followed me in, of course. Moves pretty quickly for a mechanical spider and looks disgustingly real. Something inside me wanted to step back as it started crawling up the chair toward the desk. I shoved the flash drive into the laptop before Pet made it to the desk. I wanted to swat it, then stomp on it. That would be very bad, of course, for all of us. Some god I am, afraid of spiders. "Are we done yet?" "Can't help it if your pet's slow." "Funny, Preston. Let's see if you're still laughing when Tepper's bodyguard comes in." And on cue, the hotel room door opened. "Erase him." My first instinct was to go invisible. Translucent, actually, but still great cover. But with Pet a sitting duck on Tepper's laptop, I went straight into my Mexican maid routine instead, which is kind of racist, but non-techie me couldn't even get past the hotel's Wi-Fi password block, leaving me without access to free internet translation or a decent Spanish YouTube sexy maid video. "Perdóname." I bowed my head and averted my eyes, which still didn't seem to satisfy Tepper's bodyguard. The guy stood 6 feet 3 inches and was built like a sumo wrestler who was accidentally squeezed into an Armani suit. Total cliché. I was surprised that he didn't whip out one of those silencers that the bad guys so loved using in 80s movies. Do they even still make them? And on cue, sumo wrestler pulled out a silencer and quickly spun it onto the Glock 17 that was now in his hand, aimed at yours truly. I put my hands up. He fired anyway. I felt nothing, which wasn't surprising. What I did find surprising was that the gun still made a lot of noise. Not as much noise as the weapon would have made without the suppressor, but still kind of loud. Maybe my senses are just heightened in holographic form. Sumo wrestler fired 3 more times, center mass. Pretty good shot, actually. But I didn't go down. No blood. We just looked at each other. Some people would take that as a cue to get the hell away. Not sumo wrestler. Chapter 2. I was trapped between the wall and desk and the bed nearest the hotel window, and sumo wrestler was blocking the only way out. Way too fast for such a big guy, sumo wrestler barreled straight into me, or rather, straight through me, and out the window. I held my breath, then remembered that I don't breathe in this form. Shards of glass were everywhere. Sumo wrestler, gone. Why didn't he just run or something? And now he's erased, just like Mother wanted. The bastard always seems to get his way. I pushed all feelings of guilt to the side and turned my attention back to Pet and the laptop. Pet wasn't glowing anymore, which meant we were done here. A good thing, since security and the cops would probably be here soon. Well, since this is Los Angeles, I might have a little extra time. Unlike sumo wrestler.
Time to pack up, Preston, and come home.
I reached for Pet, but it reared two of its disgusting hairy legs at me. I wanted to smack it out of the window so it could join sumo wrestler. Instead, I killed all feeling in my right hand and reached again for Pet. Projection Evolved Technology. Stupid, forced acronym. PET is about as imaginative as an army commercial. I snatched the flash drive from the laptop. Why must all of these missions involve flash drives? The paranoid part of me thinks it's to force me to interact with Pet. The rational part of me prompted me to get the hell out of there. Police sirens. Faint, but getting louder. I took one last look at the big hole in the window and plopped Pet into a black plastic bag that was laying on the desk. Pet absolutely hates being left in the dark. Don't we all? Chapter 3. When I woke up, what has become my auto subroutine kicked in. Persons within 10 feet. 1. Doc Stevens, looking a little tired and concerned. Life support systems for my comatose real body. Green. No mother on this floor, and Pet is in its recharging tube and thankfully out of sight. The entire Lazarus Project complex is wired with holographic techno-jumbo, so I don't need to be tied to Pet constantly. But my paranoia and too many thriller movies has me betting that there are parts of the complex that are offline to me. Sensitive parts. Sections where my benefactors wouldn't want me to have access to. Having your computer-generated monster running amok just isn't good for government contracts or business. How are you feeling, Alan? Fine, and glad to be back in pants. Doc Stevens smiled as he gave me room to hop off the examination table. How are you? The lines around his mouth tightened briefly. Barely noticeable, but I notice a whole lot of things lately. There's a tension between us that wasn't there several days ago. Shooting someone in the back will do that, of course. Can't blame the man for holding a grudge. I would. I'm fine. Good job on your mission. But Mother's waiting, right? Doc Stevens smiled, but it's a sad smile. Right, and it's never a good idea to keep Mother waiting. Chapter 4. The briefing room is as sterile as the lab, and as white, only much smaller. A black glass conference table with a list price of $10,000 and 10 four-star reviews takes up most of the room. Mother was seated at the head of the table, smiling at us like it was dinner time. A quick database scan told me that the armed guard stationed behind the director is Agent Natalie Pierce. Her amber eyes are lovely, but she was making it a point to show nothing but detached professionalism. Doc Stevens and I joined the Lazarus Project's director and took our seats on either side of him. I half expected Mother to berate me for erasing sumo wrestler in such a sloppy way. Focus. I forced sumo wrestler and that slight pang of guilt out of my mind. He was a murderer, and even though I didn't mean to kill him, there's no reason why I should feel sorry for him. I did a quick scan of the mission logs before we left the lab, and Mother had signed it off as a success. Tepper's laptop was infected with one of the Lazarus Project's many homegrown viruses. Sitting so closely to the director, I wanted to say something wise-ass just to annoy him, but I decided to let him show his hand first. Guessing my tactic, Mother said nothing. Instead, he lifted up a thin remote control. A ball of white light jetted up from the center of the table and quickly morphed into a scene of a right-wing demonstration. The 3D and scanning technology being used isn't dissimilar to what gives me my holographic form, but it's definitely on the low end. Charlottesville, Virginia, 2017. The information popped into my head unbidden, courtesy of the Lazarus Project's supercomputer, which I'm plugged into whenever I'm in holo form. Almost as bad, this particular holo vid came with audio. "You will not replace us!" the crowd chanted. Bored with the old news and racism, I skimmed the internet for the highlights of the rally turned bad. One woman killed by a Nazi sympathizer who crashed into a crowd of counter-protesters. 2 policemen killed in a helicopter crash. Dozens of others injured. The holovid zoomed into a middle-aged face and black glasses with a big Confederate flag emblazoned on his caved-in chest. "Larry Miller, folks," said Mother. "Certified card-carrying member of the Brotherhood and national speaker." I sneaked a quick glance at Doc Stevens and Agent Price. Their faces weren't giving anything away, which probably meant that everyone in the room was in on the game, except me, of course. So I waited and pretended to be interested in what I was witnessing. Larry Miller's worn face suddenly froze. "Miller, baby, is scheduled to speak tonight at a super-secret white supremacist meeting." From the little bit of information that I've been able to learn about the Lazarus Project, assassination isn't exactly off-limits for our little secret organization, and in Miller's case, I wouldn't necessarily argue that it's a bad thing. "Miller's been receiving death threats for the past several weeks." Mother lifted up his remote all dramatic-like and turned off the holovid. "Preston, I want you to protect him." "You're fucking kidding." "Language!" Mother turned his predatory blue eyes on Doc Stevens. "Make sure you give him a few pretty tattoos and appropriate white supremacist gear." "I'm not wearing a Confederate flag or protecting shitheads like Miller." Mother graced me with a sneer. "Preston, you'll wear goddamn leopard skin leg warmers if I tell you to." "Language!" I warned him. The director's evil blue eyes glared at me as he opened his big mouth to say something, but Doc Stevens jumped in. "Alan," said Doc Stevens, "Larry Miller is actually a deep-cover AFT agent, and he's on the verge of taking down some of the nastiest white supremacist groups in our nation." AFT, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Never heard of them before. According to their oh-so-90s website, AFT traces its agent history back to the 1800s, where they used to investigate alcohol maker tax evaders. "We need him." Doc Stevens' eyes, unlike Mother's, inspire trust. "Years of work will disappear if Miller goes down." I already know my answer. We all do. But I took in the room's occupants one by one, simply to make them wait. An illusion of power, I guess. Mother slapped me on the shoulder as he rose from the table. "You're doing your country a great service, Preston." Agent Pierce pretended to see right through me as she followed the director to the door. But he stopped, of course, just as the door slid open. For effect, of course, and then he turned to me. "Don't worry, Preston. I'm sure you'll look absolutely fabulous in leopard skin leg warmers." With those words of wisdom, Mother strutted out of the briefing room with Agent Pierce in his wake, leaving Doc Stevens and I wondering who would make the first move. Chapter 5. Miller's white supremacist rally was at an old church, which is either ironic or apropos, depending upon which side of history you're looking at. I'm 5'10", too thin, and my head is shaved so closely that it almost glows. Maybe that maid getup wasn't so bad after all. Pet was inside its leather pouch, which was attached to the right side of my belt. Sometimes I could feel it wriggling. Don't think about it. Focus on the mission. There were a few young men hanging outside the church as I approached, but the 2 guards with yellow armbands were sizing me up the moment I came within range. I wasn't sure if Doc Stevens left out the Confederate t-shirt because it's too obvious or because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Maybe both reasons. Regardless, in this black jacket and denim jeans, I pretty much looked like the rest of these losers. Which was overgeneralizing, I reminded myself as I made my way to the church's basement. There would be all types of right-wing extremists at tonight's rally: Aryan Brotherhood, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, and at least 5 more fringe groups, according to the Lazarus Project's supercomputer. Which reminded me, I needed to come up with a pet name for the supercomputer. Judas? No. Too on the nose. "Welcome, brother." The short alt-writer held up a black-and-white magazine with a photo of a little girl happily swinging on the same tree of a lynched man. No way I was paying anything for this racist bullshit. I gave Shorty a curt nod, then made my way down the busy table. The briefing files mentioned that there would be right-wing music bands here, selling racist t-shirts and other merchandise, but seeing it in person, or, in my case, in hollow form, is totally different. The church's Wi-Fi wasn't even close to high speed, but I might be able to use PET as a hotspot. Definitely not my first option, though. I was picking up 105 cell phones on this floor, mainly in the auditorium. Since the guard goons outside didn't frisk me, it was a safe bet that a lot of people here were packing weapons. There weren't many women here, but I did notice one in particular. Dark green eyes on an attractive pale face, with blonde highlights framing an otherwise round head. Her black t-shirt wasn't very tight, but tight enough to show off her 34C. Show off her nice tits, I corrected myself. Just because I'm hooked up to a computer doesn't mean I have to think like a robot. She noticed me, too, and then made a point of pretending that I didn't exist as she went back to chatting with Shorty and friends. Larry Miller had just come in and definitely looked old in this crowd, but he's well known and highly respected in the right-wing movement and undercover. Plus, someone wants to kill him. They know his secrets. Everyone here, of course, is a suspect. There were 6 rows of folding chairs. A few were occupied, so I took a seat in the 5th row and did my best to look mean and disgruntled. Not sure why, but I was surprised when dark green eyes sat down right next to me. Even more surprising, she extended her hand. "Sarah." Her grip was firm. "Darren," I lied. "Why are you here, Darren?" There was a sudden knot in my stomach, or what would be one if this were really me. "Same reason as you, Sarah." I doubt it. Her lovely green eyes were now on Miller, who was now on the stage, grabbing a microphone. "I'm looking for a man who quotes Nietzsche." I laughed. I couldn't help it. But then I noticed that Sarah wasn't smiling. Think you're in the wrong place for that kind of man. Only now did she smile. Maybe. Our attention turned to Miller, who was now testing the microphone with the assistance of a rough-looking band member. Hope he's not going to sing. More importantly, though, what was I going to do with Sarah? How did she guess so quickly that I'm a hologram? I felt the dark green eyes back on me, appraising me. What's giving me away? Doc Stevens is always telling me how perfect my disguises are. "You remind me of a friend I used to know. She didn't feel quite right in her body either." Fuck. So she changed it. So not liking the way this conversation was going. "The men here don't like different, Darren. Surgery or no surgery." What? Oh, she thinks I'm transgendered. It's not my holoform per se, it's how I move and relate to my environment. Sarah's very smart, or I'm very sloppy. A muscular man appeared behind us. Judging by the dark green eyes and scowl on his face, guess it's safe to assume that this was Sarah's protective brother. "Come on," he told Sarah. "We're going to be up first." "You're in a band?" Sarah gave me a quick smile, then followed her brother onto the stage. To both my and Miller's surprise, she gave him a warm hug. Miller's pasty face was now flushed red as her brother made a quick introduction. Shit! Please don't let it be Sarah. Chapter 6. "You have 20 minutes, Preston." I looked down at the wolf spider at my booted feet and weighed my options. "Give us a hug for good luck." I wanted to give Pet and Mother the heel of my boot. Instead, I called up a 3D schematic of Miller's 5-story apartment building. I could have layered it over my own vision, but it was 15.3 minutes past 10 o'clock, so a holographic neon green image wasn't likely to draw unwanted attention. Plus, I still wasn't quite comfortable in visual overlay mode. "Don't worry about the targets getting away, Preston. We've got all points of egress covered." Probably, but instinct also told me that Mother was cheap, so covered in his evil mind probably meant that he had enough paid agents within range. I swiped left, and the apartment hologram disappeared. Pet was next. There was no time to dwell on the fact that I actually had to touch the damn thing, so I swept it up from the sidewalk in one motion and pushed it inside my belt pouch. Now it was time to deal with Sarah and her brother. Hopefully I was wrong. Maybe she really was attracted to middle-aged right-wing celebrities. Maybe I could get all of us out of this tragedy in one piece. But then it wouldn't be a tragedy and Mother wouldn't be nearly so happy. Chapter 7. I phased through Grand Exalted Informer Miller's front door without a sound. Intel provided me with his apartment number, so I didn't need the building's blueprints for that. Knowing all possible exits was simply my backup plan. The small checkered vestibule gave me cover, while I unlocked the door and let Pet crawl in. Technically, I could have left the thing outside the door along with the pouch, but if it were inside, my hologram signal would have more strength. I intentionally ignored inventorying and pricing the two-beige apartment, though the hideous throw rug with the psychedelic circles was tempting. Think like a spy, Alan. 2 doors, side by side on the opposite end of the apartment. One of them has Miller and Sarah, and probably Sarah's brother since her flirtation bit was just a ruse. Crap! I had no idea which door to choose. Outside, the hologram apartment layout made everything look obvious, but now... 18 minutes to save Sarah and her brother Darius from the Lazarus Project agents, while simultaneously stopping the siblings from erasing Miller. From killing him, I corrected myself. I'm no more a spy than I am a Lazarus agent. I'm a test weapon, an experiment. Enough stalling. I headed straight for door number 2, and got a hard kick in the right side, sending me stumbling a few feet before I regained my balance. The kitchen. Who attacks someone from the goddamn kitchen? Darius followed his surprise attack with a spinning kick that wasn't meant to connect but to keep your opponent off balance, which it did, until I remembered that he really can't hurt me. A fast palm to my face made me hesitate just enough for him to crouch down and sweep his right foot against my left ankle, causing me to crash hard. I rolled before he could strike again and scrambled to my feet. Hell, kung fu? Thought they only used that in 70s and 80s movies. I also thought that a hologram couldn't get his butt kicked, but here I was getting backed into a wall as Darius continued throwing punch after punch. Going invisible or intangible would be nice, but Mother made it absolutely clear that anyone witnessing my special abilities must be erased. And that wasn't an option. Don't think Sarah would forgive me for getting her brother killed, but I could make myself rock hard by increasing the density of my holoform. I also had Darius's timing down, so the next time he tried slamming my face with his palm, I lifted my arm up just in time to block him. He cried out in pain, which made me feel bad, but I had to press my advantage. So I kicked him in the crotch, and down he went. With barely a thought, I returned to normal holoform density and made my way over to door number 2. It was way too late for stealth, and no, I didn't have a plan, but I swung the door open anyway. 15 minutes and 29 seconds left to save the day. Good luck to me. Sarah and I were both shocked. I'm probably the last person she expected to see. And I didn't expect to see her in a short plum metal shine slip. That and the 9mm high caliber resting against Miller's sweating temple might be kind of sexy if I were the kinky type. Which I'm not, I reminded myself. I noted that Miller was down to his pinstriped boxers and tied to a chair with orange nylon rope and bowline knots. Impressive, though the critic in me took off points for the cliché duct tape on the mouth. "Where's Darius?" "Your brother's fine. I just knocked the wind out of him." I smiled weakly. "After he beat the shit out of me." Sarah almost smiled, but the lines tightened around her mouth almost immediately. "So, Darren, I ask you again, why are you here?" "To stop you and your brother from ruining your lives." Sarah tapped Miller in the temple with her 9mm. "He already did that, didn't you, Larry, baby?"
He's not the man you think he is, Sarah. Sure he is, Darren. Sarah's dark green eyes turned hard. True, I was very young, but it's kind of difficult to forget the man who mutilated your genitals. Female genital mutilation, FGM for short, practiced in dozens of countries, most commonly in Africa, but also in parts of the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and South America. Disgusting. Even more disturbing is that we haven't stamped out the practice in the United States, and Sarah is apparently a victim of this neglect. And very dead if I didn't stop her. I'm so sorry for what happened to you, Sarah, I said, but I know for a fact that Miller didn't do this to you. How do you know that, Darren? Her gun hand remained steady. Same way I know your last name, the $550 you have in your savings account, and the date that you had the procedure. I sensed someone coming up behind me, so I carefully slid over 2 feet. Darius! Sarah's eyes remained on me. Darren here says that Miller isn't the one who destroyed me. I felt Darius's gun in my back. So much for sliding over. How would he know that? Same way that I know that in less than 11 minutes a bunch of government agents will be storming this apartment and taking you two out in body bags. Darius jammed his gun into my back a little more. He's just trying to scare us. I'm trying to save you. I kept my eyes on Sarah. She was the key to stopping this tragedy. Miller is a deep cover informant for the feds, and before that he was a federal agent, and the people that I work for will kill anyone who jeopardizes his mission. I'm dead already. The green eyes lost most of their hardness. What about your brother? Don't listen to him. He's lying. I'm begging you, Sarah. Miller didn't do this to you. Let him go. A noise outside the apartment. They're here. Sarah and Darius traded confused looks. Apparently, I was the only one who heard it. The strike team would most likely consist of 4 agents. 3 additional Lazarus Project agents would be stationed outside to watch all the exits, except for one. There's no more time. Follow me, or the both of you will die here in this man's apartment. Sarah and Darius just stared at me. So I bolted out of the bedroom and headed to the kitchen. The siblings were right behind me until I turned to find Pet blocking their path. I gave it a light kick, flinging it momentarily under the sofa. A wave of dizziness took hold of me, but disappeared just as quickly. We were in the kitchen in seconds. 20 minutes, my ass. I flung a set of doors open, revealing an old but well-kept dumbwaiter. Sarah and her brother looked at me as if I were crazy. It leads to the basement. Climb out of the northeast window to avoid the agents. Then run like hell. Another noise outside the apartment. We all heard it this time. Sarah started to climb in, but I stopped her. Darius first, just in case someone's smart enough to be down there. Darius has the best chance at handling them. They exchanged looks. Sarah nodded to her brother. He climbed in. Thankfully, Miller was smart enough or paranoid enough to have a mechanized dumbwaiter instead of a hand-pulled one. I flipped the switch. That's when the front door crashed open. Chapter 8. I was out of the kitchen in seconds with my hands up as 2 agents leapt into the apartment. Their coordination was admirable, but the stakes were high. "Where's Mother?" I said. The agents stopped moving, exchanging quick looks. Their Glocks stayed locked on me. "Miller's in the bedroom, unharmed," I said. 2 more agents rushed in and took the positions of the first 2. One agent made another ballerina-like leap to the opposite side of the kitchen entrance. The other one, gun also raised, took the other side. I held my breath, mentally, as both agents charged into the kitchen. I watched a nondescript agent finish untying Miller. Apparently, Miller loves to hear himself talk, so it was easy to send Sarah a quick text about the 2 tickets to France and the $60,000 transferred to her savings account. I wondered how long it would take the Lazarus Project to figure out where the money went. I also needed to get rid of Sarah's gun. "You risked a lot saving me." "It's my job," I told Miller, still only half listening. "Still, he who fights with monsters might take care, lest he thereby become a monster." "What?" Miller was smiling at me. "Nietzsche." Sarah knew. Everyone knew, except me. Done with pontificating, Miller gave me his back. I felt nothing as I pulled Sarah's small 9mm from my pocket and aimed it at the back of Miller's head. Then,
"Well done, Preston,"
Mother said, brushing past an oblivious Miller and Lazarus agent. Pet, unsurprisingly, was crawling right beside him. The director held his hand out for the gun. I didn't budge. Now it was aimed at him. "You lied to me," Mother smiled. "I'm surprised that you even bothered planting all those false bits of information about Miller on the net."
"We needed you to believe, Preston. You're not that good an actor. Or fighter."
He stretched out his hand a second time, and I was tempted. Man, was I tempted.
"Don't worry about your little friends. I'll let them get away."
Mother's sharp blue eyes turned predatory. "For now." I handed over Sarah's gun, absolutely hating myself. Sarah probably hated me too.
"Pet off," said Mother.
I'm not sure if I'll ever get used to watching my body fade away, but this one time I was looking forward to descending into dreamless guilt and nothingness. God Ascending, Book 2, Service. Written by Savage Tempest. Narrated by Henry Jones. God Ascending, Book 3, Puppet. Written by Savage Tempest. Narrated by Henry Jones. Chapter 1.
"So, is it an Utrecht or not?"
Melconi's voice struck me as a bit brittle for a mobster kingpin, and his skinny body didn't look like it had seen much action, but who am I to judge? Except that's exactly what I was here for, to determine if this towering piece of shit, aka art masterpiece painting, is a real Van Utrecht or not. I shifted my eyes to Ramsay. His thin smile remained firmly in place, the consummate art dealer professional. Careful not to touch the humongously ugly painting, I made a window shield wiping motion with my left hand. The web of cracks were good indicators of the painting's age, but those could have been artificially induced with something as simple as vegetable shortening. No obvious anachronisms. The piece looked good. "I need to speak to Mr. Ramsay, please. Alone."
"Alone? Fuck no. Anything you have to say to this guy, you can say in front of me and my boys."
Me and my boys? Ooh, great dialogue, Mr. Mobster Kingpin. But I kept my features cordial. "Mr. Malconi, please trust me."
"I don't trust anyone, Preston."
He aimed a bony finger at me.
"That's why I'm still alive."
"I work for a non-profit, so you know I have nothing to gain."
"Except the $5,000 I'm paying you."
"Why can't anything ever be easy?" "Mr. Malconi." I willed sincerity into my hazel eyes. "I'm grateful for the compensation. The Libertarian Arts Council is a worthy organization, charged with preventing crimes against art, but sometimes its rewards can be difficult to live on." Melconi only had 2 of his boys inside of Ramsay's gallery, probably 2 more outside. Not that he needed them. Ramsay and I hardly posed a threat, superficially at least.
"You have 3 minutes, and you guys better have an answer for me."
Melconi nodded at his muscle, nameless and kind of overweight for mobsters. Of course, they actually followed him out of the room like collared Dobermans, just like in the old gangster movies. One of the twin Dobermans even glared at me before following his master out. Ramsay took a moment to pour himself a glass of water, then, ostensibly remembering his manners, offered it to me. I stared him down, which didn't appear to bother him, so I tried another approach. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Ramsay."
"The Van Utrecht's good."
"It's very good. Too good, as they say." Ramsay just looked at me, the thin smile never fading from his lips. "How much?" I was tempted to play coy, but with Melconi less than 2 minutes from returning with his 2 big movie goons, I opted for the direct approach. Cyber Dark Zero. Ramsay's mask cracked, barely, for a second, but just enough to let me know that he was in on the game. I want names and I want access.
Ramsey's dark eyes became hard.
I don't know this cyberdark, he said sincerely. Listen, I'll split my fee with you.
I shook my head. The code is all I need from you, and you get to live, plus your fees.
I'll take you down with me.
Ramsey set his glass down and reached for the bottle. No. He was reaching for something else. He pulled out a rubber grip Rugger Special and fired 4 times into my chest. Center mass. Game over. Chapter 2. My world went dark, then bright white. Ramsey was gone, everything gone. I was in a sterile white room, not in Italy or even an art gallery, just some oversized room. Level 3 at Lazarus Project headquarters.
Nice job, Alan.
Mother came up from behind me and slapped me on the back.
Got yourself killed in less than 21 minutes.
It was hard resisting the urge to give the project director a backhand bitch slap, but according to the personnel database, Mother has considerable experience in MMA fighting. The paranoid part of me half wonders if Mother just inserted that information to scare off potential threats. As far as inflicting pain upon others, that definitely wasn't made up. Next time, I said, get more realistic computer-generated actors. I turned to Doc Stevens, standing near the room's sole door, and gave him a wink. Right, Doc? Doc Stevens' face flushed slightly. Well, actually, Alan, those were real actors. Well, that explains why the mobsters were so bad.
Too bad it doesn't explain your failure.
I turned back to the director. At 6 feet and 3 inches, he was only 2 inches shorter than me while I'm in hollow form. But to guys like him, that's 2 inches too much. It was a simulation. No one got hurt. Mother looked up at me, his eyes radiation blue and predatory.
But they will, Preston. Someone always does.
He headed for the door.
Especially with sloppy performances from lukewarm agents.
Condescending fucker.
Meet me in the briefing room in 5. Both of you.
I didn't need access to the lab's cameras to know that Doc Stevens was watching me. He strikes me as more of a scientist than doctor, but he also sidelines as a psychologist, which is why he was here with Mother, observing me. So I failed miserably, huh? Doc Stevens offered up a weak smile. Well, you performed as expected. You're expecting me to fail? Don't know why I felt hurt, but I did. We better hurry. Never a good idea to keep Mother waiting. Chapter 3. The briefing room felt more cramped and sterile than usual. It was unadorned with anything resembling comfort, except for a couple of chairs and a black glass conference table, which was retrofitted with holographic technology. Mother was seated at the head of the table, of course. His chair looked comfortable enough, unlike the other chairs in the room. Agent Natalie Pierce, with her lovely amber eyes, stood 4 feet behind and left of the Lazarus director. She remained perfectly still, suited, and her hands behind her back, but her eyes followed me, making me feel a little self-conscious, even in hollow form.
Have a seat, Preston. Doctor.
Doc Stevens and I sat down on both sides of Mother. The bitch didn't even bother looking up to acknowledge our presence, because whatever was in that blue folder was so much more interesting. Having a discussion in the briefing room means that yours truly was about to be subjected to another mission. And, judging by what just happened a few minutes ago, everyone here but me probably already knows the outcome. Still, better another mission than talking about me almost killing informant and white supremacist Larry Miller and letting his captors get away. Abetting them, actually. Mother's folder landed in front of me with a splat. The blue, predatory eyes were laughing at me, waiting to see how long it would take me to pick it up. Why not give me the short version?
You're going to a party, Preston.
In this? I looked down at my black default holosuit, then back up at Mother. He wasn't smiling. So I did, as I delicately picked up the folder. Since I'm plugged into the internet and the project's supercomputer, I was able to read the mission outline in 0.0599 seconds. This couldn't be right. You're sending me to a hackathon?
Don't worry.
I watched Mother place a small black box onto the conference table.
You won't be going alone.
All evil-like, Mother slowly pulled back an almost invisible trapdoor to let it out. A hairy, disgusting wolf spider started crawling toward my left hand. PET is what they call it, Projection Evolved Technology. The only thing keeping me tied to this world, or so they tell me. All eyes were on me. They know that I don't like spiders. Not sure if they know that I'm terrified of the things. But everyone was watching me intently, watching to see if I moved my hand or if my holographic eyes gave anything away. PET reached me within 3.5 seconds and tentatively touched me with two of its disgusting hairy legs. I wanted to scream, but I can't feel anything, right? So why do I want to scream? The fucker was starting to climb up my hand. Fuck! Don't scream. Do not scream. Chapter 4. Mission 3. Attend a hacker party. Shut down cybercrime forum and black marketplace Cyberdark Zero. Easy. Even if I know as much about cybercrime as I do about fighting. Though, in my defense, I have been doing a lot better in my martial arts training simulations. Plus, even a hologram like me looks good in a tuxedo. As long as you don't look too closely. My run-in with Sarah made it quite clear that my holoform isn't 100% passable, but judging by the way the people here were lapping up alcohol, I would pass for human just fine. This was the last day of the hackathon, and everyone appeared to be celebrating. Most of the attendees were white male and in their mid to late 20s. More than enough 30-somethings, though. Would have expected more of them to look super nerdy with matching suspenders, but apparently that was little more than a stereotype. Denim jeans with an expensive jacket or shirt, unfortunately, was the only stereotype my new party mates seemed to be living up to. There were also a number of young women here dressed up in designer gowns or designer fakes. Didn't matter, though. They were fucking gorgeous. The women, I mean. All of them A's.
Stop staring and mingle, Preston. The eye candy are strictly prostitutes, and you don't have enough capital to catch their attention.
I didn't respond because that would look pretty silly and suspicious if I were talking to myself, even with so many people drunk. But since Mother could talk to me, and since I was here in this luxury office building in holoform, that meant PET must be nearby. I scanned the entire 25,000-square-foot room in .9500 seconds. Slow, according to Mother, but far faster than any human can do unassisted. There, at the bar, wearing a sleeveless midnight gown with one of those sexy slits designed to show off a well-toned ivory leg, I made my move on her in no time. Bored, amber eyes looked up at me, then away. Come here often? Wear maid dresses often? An ivory hand reached for her martini. That mission is classified information, Agent Pierce, and purely a need-to-know basis. The amber eyes were now acutely alert, meaning everyone at Lazarus Project knows about it. About your pretty little maid outfit? No, that's classified. Agent Pierce smiled, showing off white teeth and excellent dental work. Lazarus might have even paid for it. My limited experience with the secret government-funded agency suggested that they were willing to do anything to meet their objectives. Still, I had to admit that my little conversation with the agent was making me feel a little tingly, even though I was the butt of a joke, which also made me wonder how I could feel tingly when I was in hologram form. Whatever that feeling was, died the second she removed the misty blue translucent scarf that was draped seductively across her breasts. To anyone watching, it would look like Agent Pierce was propositioning me. Quite the opposite. I wanted to backhand the bitch. A crystal wolf spider necklace embraced the lower half of her neck. PET would have been too obvious. This is a substitute. Limited, but still effective up to 30 feet line of sight. And a good way to keep me on a tight leash, no doubt. I forced a sly grin and reached over Agent Pierce for one of the free beers on the bar. No martinis for this guy. Which had absolutely nothing to do with me feeling insecure about my masculinity, or that stupid maid's outfit I was forced to project. Besides, It wasn't like I could actually drink the stuff.
If you girls have finished trading fashion tips, can we get back to the mission, please?
The Lazarus Project director had switched to an audio channel that we both could hear.
Understood, Mother,
Pierce said, all professional-like.
Initiating Phase 2 now.
The Lazarus agent took me gently by the hand and led me away from the bar. Judging by our trajectory, I guessed that we were heading to the elevators. But then Agent Pierce did the unexpected, reached behind my neck and pulled me into a playful kiss. I felt tingly again, and a little confused, until I realized that this was probably part of Phase 2. Make it look like she's propositioning me. Besides, Pierce belongs to Lazarus Project, which meant that she could never be fully trusted, tingly feeling or not. I allowed her to guide me through the cavorting crowd as we drew nearer to the elevators. In the spirit of our little charade and a little revenge, I patted her bottom. Agent Pierce stopped, turned, and smiled at me. But there was no smile behind the amber eyes, only promises of slowly ripping out my tonsils if I ever tried that again. On a hologram? Good luck with that, honey. Soon enough, we were at the elevators. We're in direct line of sight of 2 security cameras, I told Pierce. She tilted her lovely face up and whispered in my ear.
Lights.
The room's lights went dead, the music stopped, and of course, people started screaming. I sent out a quick search query. Yep, the entire neighborhood within a 5.7-mile radius was without power. Agent Pierce turned her back on the panicking crowd and hovered over the elevator buttons. Her wolf spider necklace glowed an eerie white. The elevator doors opened. We quickly entered. I watched her close the doors in the same manner and prepared for the worst as the elevator took us down. Chapter 5. Judging by our smooth ride down and the red lights above us, this luxury building included a backup generator, along with its $4.4 billion price tag. But intuition, or maybe paranoia, made me feel like I was still being left in the dark. Agent Pierce put a soft hand to her ear, as if she were receiving a private message from Lazarus Project.
Acknowledged.
She looked at me matter-of-factly.
We have a new mission.
You mean I have a new mission, I said. Your mission, I bet, was always the same. For a moment, Pierce's face lost some of its hardness.
Mother is always testing.
I folded my arms all self-righteous-like across my tuxedoed chest and waited.
We need to see how well you adapt.
I'm not a lab rat, Agent Pierce. And just like that, her humanity was gone.
Just be sure to stay on mission.
Which is?
Retrieve a package.
I glared at her. We were near the building's lobby with no sign of slowing down. Pierce was noting our descent, too.
Chip implant technology.
She looked almost apologetic.
Intel says that White Code has it and is experimenting on humans.
White Code, one of Lazarus Project's chief rivals, judging by what I found in the project's extensive database. The elevator stopped suddenly, level B3, but the doors didn't open. Pierce leaned over the elevator button panel and tried her glowing spider sketch again, but it didn't work. She stepped back and looked at me. This was the first time that I noticed concern in her eyes. I lifted up my hand, magician style, wiggled my holographic fingers, and reached into the panel. I'm still not fully clear on the technology, but my holoform's laser technology can act as an electronic disruptor of sorts. The doors slid open. Well, only halfway, to be honest, but more than enough for 2 Lazarus agents to exit one at a time. Even bathed in fire alarm red lights, Level B3 proved to be the opposite of the opulent building space we had just left. The hallway was 72 inches in width, twice the size of government regulations for public buildings. I touched a nearby wall that looked like space-age plastic. Nope, stainless steel. There were 3 glass windows, presumably reinforced, with submarine-like doors on both sides of the hallway. Very sterile and creepy, not unlike the labs at Project Lazarus.
Call up your tracking hologram, said Pierce. Just access my necklace, 5 Alpha 1.
I retrieved the data and held up my hand. A small blue grid appeared in front of me, causing Agent Pierce to lean into me to point at a glowing blue circle. Good. I felt her presence, but not tingly. There. She pointed at the T intersection, at the end of the hallway and to the right. Don't tell me those numbers is how much time we have. The red numbers on the holo grid read 5 minutes and 7 seconds. Pierce brushed past me. Just stay on mission. I quickly followed Pierce down the hallway. Pale, frightened faces passively watched us through the glass windows as we made our way to the end of the hall. They looked like immigrants, South American, easy prey for unethical scientists and corporations. I wished that there was some way I could help them. Hell, I couldn't even help myself. After turning right, we were met with a big slab of steel door. It read, "No admittance." A little cliché, but the reinforced steel door wouldn't be a problem for a hologram. Actually, this was a little too easy. Another test from Mother? Why aren't there any guards? I asked Pierce. She opened her purse and quickly removed a G42 pistol, small and lightweight with 6 rounds and quite lethal. Open the damn door. I'll cover you if anyone comes. And on cue, security arrived. Unfortunately, not the walkie-talkie kind. Worse, not even the human kind. The things reminded me of the Headless Horseman, but I focused on phasing my hand through what looked to be the security entrance panel. Damn, nothing. I removed my hand and tried again. That's when I heard it. A buzzsaw. Who would be using a buzzsaw in an underground black lab? A bullet ricocheting off of metal caught my attention. I dared to peek over my shoulder. The security robot, looking more like a Picasso vacuum cleaner than human, had raised one of its metallic arms. At the end of it was a spinning buzzsaw. I watched helplessly as it ignored me and took a swipe at Pierce, who did a fast tuck and roll, but was now on the opposite side of the security robot and further away from the door. I tried to focus. Why wouldn't the stupid door open? A low hum, mixed in with some crackling, distracted me. Electricity? I peeked over my shoulder a second time. The security robot took another swipe at Pierce, but with its left arm this time. Instead of a hand, it had a yellow ball, which reminded me of a tennis ball, except for the electricity circling it. Apparently, the robot's job was to maim, but not kill. Agent Pierce, who fired off another shot, might disagree. Given the fact that I was the one attempting to breach the door, the robot should have been going after me. Unless it didn't see me as human. Open the door already, Preston! Phasing won't work. The robot almost had Pierce cornered. It was using its buzzsaw arm to back her up, then quickly following with a swing of its electrical ball at her midsection. 3 minutes and 43 seconds left. I wasn't quite sure what would happen, but my guess was that the power would come back on, along with the security cameras and a good old-fashioned lockdown. I abandoned the door and ran up behind the security robot. It didn't even turn around, confirming my suspicion that it didn't see me as human or a threat. I jammed my right fist into his metallic back and solidified my hand 0.35%. The robot froze. No buzzsaw noise, no more electric ball. I waited until Agent Pierce scooted out of the robot's reach before removing my hand, just in case. Its buzzsaw whirred back to life as the killer robot did a 360 on its hidden wheels and sawed through my head before I could scream. Which was a good thing, because my scream would have been definitely unmanly and probably more ammunition for more Pierce jokes. I thrust my right fist into what might be the robot's chest and solidified my hand 30% this time. Its arms fell back to its sides. I removed my hand slowly, just in case it decided to come back to life a second time. It didn't. 2 minutes and 39 seconds before showtime. I joined Pierce at the steel door. She aimed her pistol at the security panel that I had failed to breach and fired twice. We watched the door slide open, then moved in quickly. Pierce had reloaded by the time we were inside. The room looked like it belonged on a starship. Walls and floors mostly charcoal silver, with blue-lit electronic consoles. I noticed that there was limited Wi-Fi, so I hopped on it to scan the room faster. 3 occupants, I said, still walking behind Pierce. She fired. A lab coat went headfirst into his console.
2.
I spun her around. What are you doing? Pierce shot me through the chest without hesitation. There was a scream behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know that Pierce had taken someone else's life.
Not all of us can change our appearances whenever we want to, Preston.
The amber eyes were sincere.
Witnesses can trace me back to Lazarus, and Mother would have me killed long before that happened.
I closed my eyes and took a deep breath.
Where is he, Preston?
She. I opened my eyes. Right behind you. Pierce spun around and almost pulled the trigger, but the woman had her hands up.
Please don't kill me. I'm just a technician.
Agent Pierce lowered her weapon and walked up to the woman. Mid-30s, probably about 138 pounds. Terrified.
Show us the implant technology.
Pierce's voice was warm, almost genteel. The technician opened her mouth in what was sure to be an automatic denial, but then she apparently thought better of it.
I'll show you everything. Please just let me live, okay?
The dark eyes were targeting me for sympathy. I nodded. She took us to a nearby wall console. I didn't really recognize much except the uncanny resemblance to some of the equipment used at Lazarus Project, which meant it could be hacked. I placed my hands casually on the left side of the console, pretending to lean on it for support, while Agent Pierce watched the shaky technician call up an image of a human outline on the black screen above.
Microchips implanted at the base of the skull,
Pierce said.
Ingenious. I don't have the access code to the formula.
That's okay, Pierce smiled, then fired point blank into the woman's forehead. We exchanged looks, but now was not the time to argue. Technically, we did have 1 minute and 13 seconds, but I also had blood on my hands. Besides, our mission wasn't complete yet. I looked on as Pierce took off her wolf spider necklace and placed it onto the sloped console. The spider started glowing, magically retrieving the formula, I supposed, and then leaving a nasty infection behind, no doubt. Typical Lazarus Project procedure. The overhead lights flickered back on. Let's go, Pierce said, retrieving her necklace. Her next move surprised me. She lifted up her hair with a soft hand and showed me the back of her neck. A nice neck, actually. I fastened the necklace's clasp as sirens started screaming our presence. We both started running and were out of the lab in seconds. 6 confused immigrant patients stared at us.
What are they doing out of their cells?
I ignored Pierce and went over to the former inmates, 3 males, 3 females, all of them dressed in black jumpsuits, which should make it easier for them to blend in.
Preston, hear those alarms? It's either us or them.
Not this time, I said, reaching my hand behind the neck of the nearest inmate. There. A second inmate took his place.
I could make you disappear.
I moved on to a third inmate. Yes, you could, but then you would have to fight your way out of here all alone. Agent Pierce's amber eyes narrowed. I chose not to focus on her or her left hand that was now resting on the wolf spider necklace. Done in 40 seconds flat.
Follow the blue bars to the stairwell. Go up 3 floors to the lobby and keep running.
Everyone looked at the small blue holographic bars that appeared on the floor and then back to me.
Go,
I said, pushing the nearest escapee forward. Then all 6 of them started running down the hallway toward the exit.
I didn't know that you could do that.
If you mean access their brain implants, I said. I wasn't sure I could pull it off. But I am sure that my command to permanently deactivate the devices within 7 hours will work. There would be no hunting down these poor people, not if they made it out of this building, which is what we needed to be doing.
Let's go, Agent Pierce,
I said as I dashed toward the soul elevator. Pierce was right behind me in seconds as the elevator doors opened. Out rolled 2 security robots.
They can't see me,
I said, moving toward the wall to let them pass.
Play decoy, and I'll get behind them and work my voodoo magic.
Hell! One of the robots rolled right up to me before I could say boo and sliced through my holographic head, which isn't any less scary the second time around.
Can't see you, huh?
Pierce fired 2 bullets at the second killer robot. How was I supposed to know that these robots possessed a learning AI, along with a shared killer robot network?
I did know that I couldn't let the security cameras catch me phasing like crazy or record Agent Pierce's flustered face, which is why I hacked into the security system back in the lab. The robot jabbed me twice in the torso with its electric ball, which luckily wasn't enough to disrupt my holoform. But I decided to use its own tactics against it and repeatedly slashed my arms through its vacuum-like chest, intermittently solidifying my hands 40%. My killer robot finally went still. But to be sure, I walked right through it. Thankfully, it didn't move again. Pierce let out a yelp and fired 2 more rounds. The second killer robot was chasing her back down the hall, taking her further away from our escape. It was only a matter of time before they sent some human backup, so I needed to finish this quickly. I ran up behind the robot, but it spun around too fast. I forced myself to ignore the buzzsaw slicing through me and leapt superhero style, fist in front of me, and phased through the damn thing, solidifying my entire body 50% for 0.35 seconds. My landing was less than superhero graceful. Agent Pierce offered me her hand, and I took it, even though a hologram certainly needs no help standing up. Maybe it was her way of saying thanks. Regardless, we had the package. The hostages were safe. It was time to leave this stupid hacker party. I called up the tracking hologram. "There," Pierce said, leaning into me. "We probably won't run into any more robots in that stairwell." "If we do," I said, "hopefully they'll have the good sense not to see me." Agent Natalie Pierce smiled at me for the first time, ever, then reloaded her pistol. Chapter 6. I was almost grateful to be back in the Lazarus lab and in my default black jumpsuit. 3.5 hours since my hacker party mission concluded, no sign of Agent Pierce since our debriefing, and Mother had only insulted me once since my return. Doc Stevens smiled at me. "Great job, Alan. I knew you could do it." "Thanks." Mother patted me on the shoulder and smiled too. "Yeah, great job, Preston. And great thinking using those illegals as a diversion." Mother's predatory blue eyes turned on Doc. "Have we located them yet?" Doc Stevens shook his head. The director turned back to me. "Strange. I wonder why that is." "Faulty chip technology?" I offered. "Perhaps." The blue eyes slowly appraised me. "But then again, all technology is eventually rendered useless, then discarded." There was a time that I would take the bait, but I was learning, probably faster than they had anticipated. I met Mother's accusing stare and smiled back at him, leaving the Lazarus Project director bored and in search of easier prey. He moved over to the other side of the lab, where Doc Stevens was analyzing my last mission performance. I looked over at the glass window adjacent to the lab. Me. The real me, with entrails of tubes and cables webbed around my comatose body and wires plugged into my shaved head. Plugged into the Lazarus supercomputer, but thankfully not a part of it. A small flicker caught my attention on a nearby monitor. 4 words flashed in red, then disappeared. "You are not human." God Ascending, Book 3, Puppet. Written by Savage Tempest. Narrated by Henry Jones.